I walked into the conference room thinking I was getting a promotion. I'd been at Sterling Logistics for 6 years, working late nights and weekends. My supervisor, Darren Walsh, had asked me to meet him at 3 o'clock. He said it was important. I straightened my blazer, grabbed my notebook, and headed upstairs. When I pushed open the glass door, I saw the entire management team sitting around the table. My stomach dropped. Something felt wrong. Darren didn't smile. He didn't even look at me. He just cleared his throat and said, "Maya, we've decided to let you go." Effective immediately. The room went silent. I stood there, frozen, trying to process his words. No warning. No explanation. Just embarrassment. My hands started shaking. I heard someone cough awkwardly. Darren slid a folder across the table. "Sign this," he said coldly. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. This wasn't real. But it was. I packed up my desk while everyone pretended not to stare. My ears burned with shame. My chest ached like someone had punched me. I grabbed my coffee mug, my notebook, and the little plant I'd kept by my monitor for 3 years. Everything fit into one sad cardboard box. People whispered behind their computer screens. A few looked away when I passed. I tried to keep my head up, but inside, I was falling apart. The walk to the elevator felt like a mile. My hands trembled as I pressed the button. The doors opened, and I stepped inside. Right as they started to close, I glanced back through the glass wall of the conference room. Darren was laughing. Actually laughing. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, looking smug. That image burned into my mind. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not there. But my throat was tight, and my eyes stung. As I walked out the front doors, I heard Darren's voice echo down the hallway. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some people just aren't built for business." A few people chuckled. I kept walking, gripping my box so hard my knuckles turned white. I reached my car, threw the box in the back seat, and sat there in the parking lot for 10 minutes. I stared at the steering wheel, replaying everything in my head. 6 years. 6 years of loyalty, of solving problems, of saving them money. And this was how it ended. I started the car and drove home in complete silence. No radio. No phone calls. Just me and my racing thoughts. When I finally walked through my apartment door, I set the box down, locked the door behind me, and collapsed onto the couch. That's when I let myself cry. Not quiet tears. Deep, shaking sobs. The kind that hurt your chest. I cried until I had nothing left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table for hours, staring at nothing. My mind raced with questions. Why me? What did I do wrong? How was I going to pay rent? But then, something shifted. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed late, fixing their broken systems. I thought about the tool I'd been building in secret. A logistics software that could streamline route planning and cut costs. I'd worked on it quietly for 2 years, never telling anyone. It was mine. My idea. My code. I had nothing to lose anymore. I opened my laptop and clicked on the folder I'd kept hidden. Lines of code filled the screen. It wasn't finished, but it was close. Really close. I stared at it for a long time. Then I made a decision. If Darren thought I wasn't built for business, maybe it was time to prove him wrong. I spent the rest of the night cleaning up the code, fixing bugs, and writing a pitch document. Every night after work at Sterling, I'd been tinkering with this logistics tool. I didn't think it mattered back then. It was just something I did to stay sharp, to learn new skills. But now, looking at it with fresh eyes, I realized it could actually work. The software automated freight route optimization, cutting down on fuel costs and delivery delays. It was simple, but powerful. I'd tested it using public data sets, and the results were impressive. A 30% efficiency boost. That was huge. I finished the pitch document around 4 a.m. My eyes burned from staring at the screen, but I felt something I hadn't felt in days: hope. I saved everything to a USB drive and sent a few cold emails to small tech startups. I didn't expect much. But I had to try. If this failed, at least I'd know I gave it everything. I crawled into bed as the sun started to rise, exhausted but determined. I pitched the tool to a small tech startup called Apex Systems. Honestly, I expected silence. Or maybe a polite rejection. But instead, I got a reply in 42 minutes. The subject line read, "Can you meet Thursday?" My heart nearly stopped. I read the email 3 times to make sure it was real. They wanted to see a demo. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I rehearsed my pitch in front of the mirror. I tested the software over and over to make sure nothing would crash. Thursday came, and I walked into their office wearing my best blazer. My hands were sweaty. My voice shook during the first few slides. But once I got into the technical details, I found my rhythm. The founder, a guy named Marcus, leaned forward in his chair. He asked smart questions. He looked genuinely interested. At the end, he said, "We want to partner with you." I almost didn't believe him. We shook hands, and I walked out of that meeting feeling like I could fly. Starting over felt terrifying. I didn't have much. No fancy title. No business cards. No safety net. Just my idea and a partnership with Apex Systems. We agreed to split resources. They'd handle marketing and sales. I'd handle development and logistics strategy. It was a fair deal, but it meant I was all in. No backup plan. I worked from my apartment, turning my kitchen table into an office. Some days, I felt confident. Other days, I questioned everything. What if this failed? What if Darren was right about me? But I couldn't stop now. I poured every ounce of energy into building the software. I worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and takeout. My friends worried about me. My mom called, asking if I was okay. I told them I was fine, but honestly, I wasn't sure. I was scared. Exhausted. But also more alive than I'd felt in years. I had something to prove, to Darren, to myself, to everyone who doubted me. The first few weeks were rough. I second-guessed everything. Every line of code. Every decision. Every email I sent. I kept thinking about Sterling, about the way Darren humiliated me. Some nights, I wanted to give up. But then, one morning, my phone buzzed with a notification. Our first beta client. A small freight company called Redwood Transport wanted to try the software. My hands shook as I read the email. This was it. My first real test. I met with their operations manager, a woman named Janet. She was skeptical at first. She'd tried other tools before, and none of them worked. I spent 3 hours with her, showing her exactly how the system worked. By the end, she agreed to a trial run. 2 weeks later, Janet called me. "Maya," she said, her voice bright, "you saved my job." They'd reduced errors by 42%. Fuel costs dropped. Deliveries were faster. She was thrilled. I hung up and cried, happy tears this time. That first win changed everything. Word spread quickly in the logistics world. Small companies started reaching out, asking about the software. We signed 3 more clients in a month. Then 5 more. Revenue started trickling in. Not much at first, but enough to cover my rent and keep the lights on. Marcus and his team at Apex were ecstatic. They pushed hard on marketing, and I focused on improving the product. We added new features, fixed bugs, and made the interface cleaner. Every piece of feedback mattered. I worked non-stop, but it didn't feel like work anymore. It felt like purpose. One afternoon, I was sitting in a coffee shop, reviewing code, when I got a LinkedIn message. It was from an old coworker at Sterling. His name was Ben. We used to grab lunch sometimes. He said, "Hey Maya, heard you're doing your own thing now." "That's amazing. Things here are not great." I asked what he meant. He didn't hold back. "Darren promoted some guy who doesn't even know what an API is." Ben told me everything. After I left, Sterling started falling apart. The new guy Darren hired, Kyle, had no logistics experience. He was Darren's nephew. Pure nepotism. Kyle made terrible decisions. He ignored the systems I'd built and tried to modernize everything with flashy software that didn't work. Costs skyrocketed. Clients complained. Employees quit. Darren blamed everyone except himself. Ben said morale was at an all-time low. People were updating their resumes. The company was hemorrhaging money. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me felt vindicated. Darren was reaping what he sowed. But another part of me felt sad. I'd put 6 years into Sterling. I'd cared about that place. Hearing it crumble hurt more than I expected. Ben asked if I was hiring. I told him not yet, but soon. After we hung up, I sat there thinking. Sterling was struggling. My software could have saved them. But they chose arrogance over competence. That was their mistake, not mine. A few weeks later, I got an email from a business podcast called The Startup Voice. They wanted to interview me about my journey. I almost said no. Talking about myself felt weird. But Marcus convinced me. Exposure is good, he said. So I agreed. The interview was over Zoom. The host, Rachel, was warm and encouraging. She asked about Sterling, about getting fired, about building the software. I told the truth, all of it. How Darren humiliated me. How I worked nights to build something meaningful. How I refused to let his words define me. Rachel called me one of the most promising minds in logistics tech. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and thanked her. The episode went live 2 days later. I didn't expect much. But the next morning, I woke up to hundreds of notifications. The podcast clip had gone viral. 200,000 views in less than a week. My inbox flooded with emails from companies I used to dream of working for. Investors. Journalists. Other entrepreneurs. It was overwhelming. And honestly, a little surreal. The attention was intense. My LinkedIn exploded. I got interview requests from major business sites. One article called me a rising star in logistics innovation. I tried to stay grounded, but it was hard. Every day brought something new. A partnership offer. A speaking invitation. A potential investor. Marcus and I worked late into the nights, trying to keep up with demand. We hired 2 developers and a sales rep. The team was small, but passionate. Everyone believed in what we were building. One evening, I sat at my desk, staring at the computer screen. A year ago, I was packing up my desk in shame. Now, I was leading a company that mattered. It felt surreal. But also fragile. I knew success could disappear as fast as it came. I couldn't get comfortable. Not yet. I had too much to prove. Too much to protect. And deep down, I wondered if Darren had seen any of this. Did he know what I'd become? Did he regret firing me? I didn't know. And honestly, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Scaling scared me. We were growing fast, maybe too fast. I had to hire people. Build a real team. Create structure. It was overwhelming. I'd never managed a company before. What if I messed it up? What if I became the kind of boss I hated? These thoughts kept me up at night. But I pushed forward. We moved into a small office space downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. I hired a project manager, a UX designer, and 2 more engineers. The office buzzed with energy. Everyone worked hard, but the vibe was supportive. No toxic competition. No humiliation. Just collaboration. One day, I was reviewing resumes for a senior operations role. I clicked open a PDF, and my breath caught. The name at the top, Richard Lawson. He was one of Darren's top managers at Sterling. The same guy who sat in that conference room and watched me get fired. He didn't say a word that day. Just sat there, silent. And now, he wanted a job with me. I stared at the screen, stunned. My first instinct was anger. How dare he? But then, curiosity crept in. Why did he want to leave Sterling? I didn't reply to Richard's application right away. I needed time to think. Part of me wanted to reject him immediately. But another part wanted to know what happened at Sterling. Why was he jumping ship? I decided to call him. He answered on the second ring. Maya, he said, his voice cautious. I wasn't sure you'd reach out. I asked him straight, why do you want to work here? There was a long pause. Then he sighed. Because Sterling is sinking. And I should have said something when Darren fired you. I should have stood up for you. I didn't. I was a coward. I'm sorry. His honesty surprised me. I didn't forgive him. Not yet. But I respected it. We talked for 20 minutes. He told me everything, how Darren was bleeding clients, how Kyle was running the company into the ground, how people were leaving in droves. Richard wanted a fresh start. He wanted to work somewhere that valued competence over politics. I told him I'd think about it. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. Could I work with someone who stayed silent during my worst moment? Maybe. If he proved himself. A few weeks later, we landed a pitch with a major logistics client, Transglobal Freight. They were massive. If we landed this contract, it would change everything. We'd outgrow Darren's company overnight. The presentation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I spent days preparing. Marcus and I rehearsed every slide, every answer, every possible question. The night before, I barely slept. I kept running through scenarios in my head. What if I messed up? What if they chose someone else? But when I walked into that boardroom, something clicked. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I pitched with confidence, showing them exactly how our software could save them millions. The executives leaned in, taking notes. They asked tough questions. I answered every single one. At the end, the CEO stood up and shook my hand. "We'll be in touch," he said. I walked out feeling electric. 2 days later, we got the email. We won the contract. Transglobal chose us. I screamed in the office. The whole team celebrated. We'd just beaten 3 major competitors, including Sterling Logistics. Winning that contract felt like a turning point. Revenue doubled. Our client list grew. We hired more people. The office expanded. Everything was moving fast. But then, something unexpected happened. One of our new hires sent me a screenshot. It was an internal email from Sterling. The subject line, "Emergency cost-cutting measures." They were laying people off. Clients were pulling out. Darren was scrambling. I stared at the screen, processing what I was seeing. Sterling was in crisis mode. And it wasn't just rumors anymore. It was real. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes. But also sadness. That company used to mean something to me. I'd given it 6 years of my life. Watching it collapse was bittersweet. Then, a week later, I got an email from a private investor named Alan Greaves. The subject line read, "Acquisition interest." My heart pounded as I opened it. He wanted to discuss acquiring a struggling logistics company. He didn't name it, but I knew. He was talking about Sterling. And he wanted me to lead the acquisition. I met Alan at a downtown restaurant. He was in his 50s, sharp suit, calm demeanor. He got straight to the point. "Sterling Logistics is drowning," he said. "Their financials are a mess. Leadership is incompetent. But the client base is still valuable. If someone smart took over, it could be salvaged." He paused, looking at me carefully. "I think that someone is you." My mind raced. Me? By Sterling? The company that fired me? It felt surreal. But also, poetic. Alan laid out the numbers. Sterling was worth a fraction of what it used to be. With the right capital and leadership, it could be turned around. He wanted to back me financially. I'd run the company. He'd be a silent investor. I didn't answer right away. I told him I needed time to think. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with possibilities. If I did this, I'd be walking back into the place that destroyed me. But I'd be walking in as the owner. Darren would answer to me. It was tempting. Really tempting. But was it the right move? I spent the next few days doing research. I looked into Sterling's financials, employee turnover, and client complaints. It was worse than I thought. They'd lost 40% of their clients in 8 months. Revenue was down 60%. Employees were leaving faster than they could hire. And Darren? He was still in charge, blaming everyone but himself. I found something else, too. My old performance reviews. Someone had sent them to me anonymously. I opened the files and felt sick. They'd been doctored. My original reviews were glowing, high marks across the board. But the versions in my termination file? Completely rewritten. Lower scores. Vague complaints. Fabricated issues. Darren had lied. He'd changed my reviews to justify firing me. I sat there, staring at the screen, anger boiling inside me. He didn't just fire me. He tried to erase my value. To rewrite history. That was the moment I made my decision. I called Alan and told him I was in. We were buying Sterling. And I was going to fix everything Darren had broken. The due diligence process took 3 weeks. Lawyers reviewed contracts. Accountants dissected financial statements. I sat in on every meeting, asking questions, taking notes. The deeper we dug, the worse it looked. Toxic culture reports. Harassment complaints ignored. Shady financial maneuvers to hide losses. Sterling wasn't just struggling. It was rotting from the inside. But underneath all that, there was something worth saving. Good employees who'd been trapped under bad leadership. Loyal clients who'd stuck around despite the chaos. A brand that still had recognition. We could turn this around. I just needed control. Finally, the day came to sign the offer. I sat in a conference room with Alan, our lawyers, and Sterling's board. Darren wasn't there. He'd been kept in the dark until the last moment. I picked up the pen, my hand steady, and signed my name. The deal was done. Sterling Logistics was mine. Alan shook my hand. "Congratulations," he said, grinning. I smiled back, but inside, I felt something else. Not just victory. Responsibility. I just bought the company that fired me. Now I had to prove I could lead it. The news broke the next morning. Tech blogs. LinkedIn. Local business journals. Everyone was talking about it. The headlines were almost identical. Former employee acquires company that once fired her. My phone exploded with messages. Friends. Family. Former coworkers. Reporters. Everyone wanted to know how it felt. Honestly, I didn't know yet. It was too big, too surreal to process. I did one interview with a business reporter. She asked if this was about revenge. I looked her in the eye and said, "No. This is about second chances. For me. And for the people still working there." That quote got picked up everywhere. It became part of the story. The underdog who came back. The woman who refused to quit. It felt strange seeing my face on articles, hearing my name in podcasts. But I didn't let it distract me. I had work to do. The real test was about to begin. I was walking back into Sterling, not as an employee, but as the owner. And I had no idea how people would react. I walked back into Sterling Logistics on a Monday morning. I wore the same beige blazer I wore the day I got fired. I wanted to remember where I came from. The security guard at the front desk looked up and froze. "Maya," he said, confused. I smiled. "Hi, James. I'm back." He didn't know what to say. I walked through the lobby, past the reception desk, and into the elevator. My heart pounded. The doors opened on the 4th floor, executive level. People stared as I walked by. Whispers followed me down the hall. I reached the corner office, the one that used to be Darren's. My name was on a brass plate beside the door now. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The view was the same. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But everything else felt different. This was my office now. My company. I set my bag down, took a deep breath, and sat in the chair. It felt surreal. A year ago, I was nobody here. Now, I was in charge. I looked out the window and allowed myself a small smile. I'd made it. But the hardest part was just beginning. I called an all-hands meeting for that afternoon. The entire staff packed into the main conference room. I stood at the front, looking out at faces I used to know. Some looked hopeful. Others looked terrified. I cleared my throat and began. I know this is strange. A year ago, I was fired from this company. Today, I own it. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I believe Sterling can be better. But that starts with honesty. I paused, meeting their eyes. Things have been bad. People have been hurt. Trust has been broken. I can't fix that overnight. But I promise you this, no more lies. No more favoritism. If you work hard and treat people with respect, you'll have a future here. The room was silent. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I held them back. After the meeting, people came up to me. Old coworkers. People I barely knew. They thanked me. They said they were glad I was back. It felt good. Really good. But I knew this was just the beginning. Later that day, I had to meet with Darren. HR had arranged a private conversation in a small meeting room. I walked in, and there he was. He looked smaller somehow. Tired. Defeated. He didn't stand up when I entered. Maya, he said quietly. I nodded. Darren. There was a long, awkward silence. Finally, he spoke. I didn't think you'd actually come back. I sat down across from him. Neither did I. He looked at me, his jaw tight. So what happens now? I took a breath. You're being let go. Effective immediately. HR will walk you through the details. His face went pale. You're firing me? I kept my voice calm. Yes. For a moment, I thought he might yell. Argue. Blame me. But he didn't. He just nodded, his shoulders sagging. I guess I deserve that. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He stood up, shook my hand stiffly, and left the room. I sat there alone for a few minutes, letting it sink in. It was over. Darren was gone. And I was finally free. The next few weeks were a blur. I restructured the leadership team. Fired the people who enabled the toxic culture. Promoted the ones who deserved it. I brought in Richard Lawson as COO. He'd proven himself at my other company, and I needed someone who understood Sterling's operations. Slowly, things started to stabilize. Clients who'd left began returning. Employees felt safe again. Revenue ticked upward. We still had a long way to go, but the ship was turning. One afternoon, I was walking through the office when I passed Darren in the hallway. He was carrying a box of his things. Our eyes met. I didn't gloat. I didn't say a word. I just nodded. He nodded back and kept walking. Watching him leave felt strange. Not victorious. Not even satisfying. Just, final. This chapter was over. He'd go on to whatever came next. And so would I. That evening, I stood by the window in my office, looking out at the city lights. My name was on the door now. My company. My rules. And I'd earned every bit of it. A year later, Sterling was thriving. We'd rebuilt the culture, regained clients, and restored the brand. Revenue was up 70%. People actually wanted to work here again. I still worked long hours. I still doubted myself sometimes. But I'd learned something important. Failure isn't the end. It's just the middle. One day, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. No return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a short note. You were right. I was wrong. Congratulations. It was signed, Darren. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it up and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to prove, to myself, to everyone who doubted me, that I was never the failure he said I was. I looked out at the office, at the people working, laughing, thriving. This was my proof. Not the headlines. Not the money. This. A company built on respect. On second chances. On the belief that your worst moment doesn't define you. I smiled to myself. I'd made it. And I was just getting started. So, here's a question to sit with for a moment. What box are you carrying? Maybe it's not a literal cardboard box from a desk you had to pack up. Maybe it's a story someone wrote for you, a label like, not good enough, not a leader, or not built for this. For Maya, that box was filled with shame. But inside it was also a plant, a tiny, living thing she had nurtured for years. And that's the part of the story we can't forget. In that same box of humiliation, she carried her own potential. So if you're carrying a box right now, if you're holding on to words or a moment that made you feel small, my advice is this. Don't just put it down and walk away. Open it. Look inside. Past the shame, past the anger. What's the one small, living thing in there that you've been nurturing? Your skill? Your idea? Your quiet belief in a better way? That is your seed. That is your freight flow. You don't need to have the whole plan. Maya didn't. You just need to take that one thing and plant it. Code one function. Write one proposal. Have one conversation you've been avoiding. Water it with your integrity. Give it light by refusing to let that old story define you. Your comeback isn't about proving them wrong to their face. It's about proving yourself right, in the quiet of your own kitchen, day after day. So I'll ask you again, what's in your box? And what's the first, small step you'll take today to build something that is truly, undeniably yours? Let me know in the comments. What's the one thing you're choosing to build from your box? Your story could be the spark for someone else.